Taeho stood in the grand hall of the diplomatic vessel, trying his best not to shake. This was his first real assignment as a xenobiologist, and it happened to be the most important meeting in human history. Earth was making contact with the Valerians, an alien race far more advanced than humanity. The room was massive, with walls that seemed to glow with soft purple light. Strange symbols floated in the air, probably some kind of holographic display that Taeho did not understand. He adjusted his uniform and glanced at his supervisor, Do-hyun, who stood calm and confident at the front of the human delegation. Do-hyun had done this sort of thing before, meeting with representatives from other worlds. But for Taeho, everything felt overwhelming. The air smelled different here, sweet like flowers but also metallic. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy and strange. The Valerian delegation entered through tall doors that split open without any visible mechanism. They were beautiful creatures, tall and elegant with skin that shimmered like pearls. Their eyes were large and golden, and they moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy in comparison. At the center of their group walked Princess Nara, daughter of the Valerian Emperor. She wore flowing robes of deep blue that seemed to move on their own, and her head was adorned with a crown of what looked like living crystal. Taeho felt his breath catch. She was stunning. But then his cybernetic implants activated, the ones the medical corps had installed in his eyes and brain, to help him detect microscopic alien life forms. The world shifted slightly, colors becoming sharper, and he could suddenly see things normal humans could not. Electromagnetic signatures, heat patterns, biological markers invisible to the naked eye. That was when he saw it. On Princess Nara's lower back, just above where her robes gathered, there was something wrong. What appeared to be decorative armor, a beautiful piece of curved metal that other Valerians also wore, was glowing in his enhanced vision. It pulsed with a sick yellow light, and thin tendrils extended from it into her body. His stomach dropped. That was not armor. That was alive. The formal introductions began. Do-hyun stepped forward and bowed in the Valerian manner, placing his right hand over his heart and extending his left palm forward. The translator devices everyone wore hummed softly, converting speech into something both species could understand. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, we greet you with open hearts and hopes for friendship," Do-hyun said. Princess Nara smiled and returned the gesture. "We welcome humanity to the community of spacefaring peoples. May this meeting be the first of many." Taeho barely heard the words. He kept staring at the thing on her back. It was moving. The tendrils were pulsing, drawing something from her body. He could see her electromagnetic field weakening in that area. This was bad. This was very bad. He needed to say something. But how could he interrupt the most important diplomatic meeting in history? The princess was speaking now, something about trade agreements and cultural exchange. Taeho's mind raced. If that thing was what he thought it was, a parasitic organism, then she was in danger. All the Valerians wearing similar armor were in danger. He counted quickly. 5 others in the room had the same glowing signatures on their bodies. He took a step forward. Do-hyun shot him a warning glance, but Taeho ignored it. He took another step. His heart pounded in his chest. The Valerian guards noticed him moving and tensed, their hands moving to weapons Taeho could not identify. Princess Nara stopped speaking and turned to look at him. Her golden eyes fixed on his face, and her expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to irritation. Taeho realized with horror that he had been staring, not at her face but at her lower back, at what she thought was decorative armor. The silence in the room became heavy and uncomfortable. One of the Valerian advisors whispered something that sounded angry. Another human diplomat, a woman named Jiwoo, tried to step forward to pull Taeho back, but it was too late. "Why do you keep looking at my butt, human?" Princess Nara snapped, her voice sharp with anger and embarrassment. The translator rendered her words clearly, and Taeho felt his face burn red. The entire human delegation looked mortified. Do-hyun closed his eyes briefly, probably praying this was just a nightmare. The Valerian guards moved closer, hands definitely on weapons now. Taeho raised his hands in what he hoped was a peaceful gesture. "I am so sorry, Your Highness. I was not looking at... I was not trying to be rude. I was looking at the thing on your back." "My ceremonial armor?" Her voice dripped with ice. "The sacred ornament passed down through the royal family for generations? You find it amusing?" "No, please, you do not understand," Taeho said quickly, words tumbling out. That is not armor. That is alive. It is a parasite. The room erupted. Valerian guards rushed forward. The human delegation shouted in protest. Dohyun was trying to explain that Taiho was young and inexperienced and clearly having some kind of breakdown. Princess Nara stood frozen, her face showing shock and rage in equal measure. "You dare insult not only me but my entire family's heritage," she said, her voice shaking. "I have cybernetic implants," Taiho said desperately as two Valerian guards grabbed his arms. "I can see electromagnetic signatures, biological markers. That thing on your back is feeding on you. It is draining your neural energy. And you are not the only one. 5 others here have the same thing." One of the Valerian advisors, an older male with silver skin, stepped forward. "This is outrageous. Remove this human immediately." But Princess Nara held up a hand. Something in Taiho's voice, the pure panic and sincerity, seemed to cut through her anger. She studied his face carefully. "You truly believe what you are saying," she said slowly. "Yes," Taiho said. "Please let me prove it." "A medical scan." "Just one scan. If I am wrong, I will accept any punishment. But if I am right, you are in danger. All of you." Princess Nara looked at her advisors, then at the ornament on her back, or what she thought was an ornament. For a long moment, nobody moved. The fate of human-Valerian relations hung in the balance, decided by a young xenobiologist who could not keep his eyes to himself, and an alien princess who had to choose between tradition and trust. Finally, she spoke. "Take him to the medical bay. We will do one scan, just one, and if he is lying..." She let the threat hang in the air. As the guards dragged him away, Taiho caught Dohyun's eye. His supervisor looked like he wanted to strangle him and hug him at the same time. Taiho had either just saved the princess's life or destroyed humanity's chances at the stars. He would find out which very soon. The medical bay was nothing like the hospitals on Earth. Everything was smooth and curved with no sharp edges anywhere. Soft blue light came from the walls themselves and the air smelled clean. Almost too clean. Taiho sat on a strange chair that adjusted itself to his body shape, which was both comfortable and unsettling. 2 Valerian guards stood by the door watching him with expressions he could not read. They had not hurt him, but they had not been gentle either. His arms still ached from where they had gripped him. Princess Nara entered with 3 others. One was the silver-skinned advisor who had called for Taiho's removal. Another was a Valerian female wearing what looked like medical robes, carrying a device that hummed softly. The third was Dohyun, who looked like he had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. "You have one chance," Princess Nara said, her voice cold and formal. "Dr. Hana will perform a standard medical scan. If this device shows nothing unusual, you will be charged with insulting royalty and attempting to sabotage first contact. The penalty for such crimes is severe." Taiho swallowed hard but nodded. "I understand." Dr. Hana approached the princess with professional detachment. She activated her device, which projected a soft green light over Nara's body. The light moved slowly from her head downward, and a holographic display appeared in the air showing her internal structure. Taiho could see the Valerian organs, so different from human ones. Their hearts were in a different place. They had extra chambers in their lungs. Their neural pathways were more complex, spreading throughout their entire body rather than centering in the brain. The scan reached her lower back. For a moment, nothing seemed different. Then Dr. Hana froze. Her golden eyes widened, and her hand holding the scanner began to shake. "What is it?" Princess Nara asked. Hana said nothing. She adjusted the scanner settings, making the display larger. Now everyone could see it clearly. The beautiful ornament on the princess's back was not ornamental at all. It was a living creature, flat and disc-shaped, with dozens of thin tendrils that had pushed through her skin and wrapped around her spinal column. The tendrils glowed in the scan, pulsing rhythmically as they drew neural energy from her body. The room went completely silent. Princess Nara stared at the holographic display, her face going pale, her expression shifting from disbelief to horror. "How long?" she whispered. "How long has this been inside me?" Dr. Hana's voice shook when she answered. "Based on the integration level, at least 2 years, Your Highness." 2 years, Nara repeated numbly. She looked at Taiho. "How did you see it?" Taiho stood up carefully, not wanting to alarm the guards. "My implants let me see electromagnetic signatures. Living things give off specific patterns. When I looked at you, I saw something that should not be there. The patterns were wrong. Predatory." The silver-skinned advisor, who Taiho learned was named Counselor Vin, stepped forward. His hands were clasped tightly behind his back. This is impossible. That ornament came from the royal treasury. It has been in the princess's family for 8 generations. Then it has been hiding for 8 generations, Taiho said quietly. These organisms are intelligent. They mimic their surroundings. They make themselves look like something valuable so they will not be removed. Do-hyun spoke for the first time since entering. Your Highness, Taiho mentioned that others in the diplomatic hall also showed the same signatures. If he is correct about you, he may be correct about them as well. Princess Nara turned to Dr. Hana. Scan everyone who wears ceremonial ornaments. Everyone in the palace. Start with the royal family and work outward. Over the next 3 hours, the medical bay became chaos. One by one, Valerian officials arrived for scans. The results were devastating. Out of 37 individuals wearing traditional ornaments, 23 were infected with parasites. They were all high-ranking members of the court, generals, advisors, ministers, even the princess's younger brother, a boy who could not have been more than 15 in human years. Each infected individual reacted differently. Some became angry, demanding immediate removal. Others went into shock, unable to process what they were seeing. The young prince cried silently while his ornament, a band around his upper arm, pulsed and writhed on the medical display. Taiho worked alongside Dr. Hana, using his implants to identify infected individuals before they were scanned. It was faster that way. He would look at someone and know immediately if they carried a parasite. At first, the Valerians were uncomfortable with him staring at them. But after the first few confirmed cases, they began to understand. His strange human eyes could see death that theirs could not. Can they be removed? Princess Nara asked. She had regained her composure, becoming every bit the royal leader her position required. But Taiho noticed her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking. Dr. Hana examined the scans carefully. Not easily. The tendrils are wrapped around critical neural pathways. Cutting them out could cause paralysis or death. We need to understand these organisms better before we attempt removal. Then study 1, Nara said. She pointed to the hologram of the parasite on her own back. Study mine. Your Highness, that could be dangerous. Everything is dangerous now, Nara interrupted. My people are infected. My family is infected. I need to know what these things are and where they came from. Taiho cleared his throat. May I make a suggestion? Everyone turned to look at him. He felt small under their gazes, but he continued. On Earth, we have extensive experience with parasitic organisms. We have been fighting them for our entire evolutionary history. Maybe human medical knowledge could help. Counselor Vin looked skeptical. You believe your primitive medicine could solve a problem our advanced science cannot? Our medicine is not primitive, Do-hyun said, his voice sharp. It is different. We come from a harsh world. We have learned to fight diseases and parasites that would have destroyed softer species. Princess Nara studied Taiho thoughtfully. You saw what we could not. Perhaps you know what we do not. She turned to Dr. Hana. Work with the humans. Share all data. Use any resources necessary. Hana bowed. As you command, Your Highness. As the medical staff began organizing research teams, Taiho noticed something on one of the displays. He moved closer, his implants focusing on a specific data point. The parasites all showed the same unusual marker in their genetic structure. A sequence that was too regular, too perfect to be natural. Dr. Hana, he called out. Look at this. She came over and examined what he was pointing at. Her face went even paler than before. That cannot be natural evolution. What does it mean? Princess Nara asked. Hana's voice was barely above a whisper. It means these parasites were engineered. Someone created them deliberately. Someone put them in your family's treasury knowing they would be worn by the royal bloodline. The implications hit everyone at once. This was not an accident of nature. This was an attack. Someone had deliberately infected the Valerian royal family and their highest officials with parasites, designed to drain their neural energy. Someone had been slowly killing the leadership of an entire civilization. Princess Nara's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. Find out who did this. Find out how to remove these things, and find out why. Taiho met her eyes and nodded. He had come to this ship as a junior scientist hoping to catalog alien microbes. Now he was caught in a conspiracy that threatened to topple an empire. His simple observation had opened a door that could not be closed. Behind that door was something dark and calculated, something that had been hiding in plain sight for generations. The hunt for answers had begun, and Tejo had the terrible feeling that the parasites were only the beginning. Princess Nara stood in her private chambers, staring at her reflection in a mirror made of polished crystal. Behind her, Tejo carefully examined the parasite still attached to her back with his cybernetic vision. They had decided not to announce the discovery publicly yet. Too many questions remained unanswered, and in a palace full of infected officials, trust was a dangerous luxury. "Tell me what you see," Nara said quietly. Tejo focused his implants, watching the electromagnetic patterns pulse and flow. "It is dormant right now. Resting, maybe. But I can see it drawing energy from your neural system in small amounts, like it is sipping rather than gulping." "How poetic," Nara said with bitter humor. "I have been feeding a monster for 2 years." Dr. Hana entered through the door, followed by Do-hyun and 2 human medical specialists they had called from the diplomatic ship. One was a woman named Jiwoo who specialized in parasitology. The other was a man named Minho, who worked with cybernetic systems and biological engineering. "We have completed the analysis of the genetic markers," Hana said, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the room. "The results are disturbing. The display showed the parasite's DNA structure, if it could be called DNA. It was far more complex than anything found in nature." Jiwoo stepped forward and pointed to specific sections. "This is not natural evolution," she explained. "These sequences here and here are artificial. Someone designed these organisms with very specific purposes. They feed on neural energy but do it slowly so the host does not notice the drain. They mimic valuable objects to avoid detection. And look at this section." She expanded part of the genetic code. "This is a communication sequence. These parasites can send and receive signals to each other. They are networked," Minho added, "which means whoever created them can potentially control them remotely, or at least monitor what they are doing." The implications made everyone in the room go quiet. Princess Nara turned from the mirror, her face composed but her eyes showing fear. "Someone has been listening to our thoughts?" "Not thoughts exactly," Jiwoo said, "but emotions, stress levels, neural activity patterns. They could know when you are worried, angry, making important decisions. They could know everything about the mental state of your entire leadership." Do-hyun crossed his arms. "This is an intelligence operation. Whoever did this has been spying on the Valerian government for years. Or preparing for something bigger," Tejo added. Everyone looked at him. "Think about it. Why just spy? These parasites are draining neural energy. Slowly, yes, but consistently. What if that is the real goal? To weaken the leadership over time. Make them tired, less sharp, more prone to mistakes." Princess Nara sat down heavily on a curved chair. "We need to know who did this. Hana, can you trace where the ornaments came from?" "I already started that investigation," Hana replied. "The Royal Treasury keeps detailed records. According to them, the ornaments were gifts from General Vex 20 years ago. He claimed to have discovered them in an archaeological dig on the 3rd moon." "Vex," Nara repeated, her voice hardening. "Head of the military council. One of my father's most trusted advisors. Is he infected?" Do-hyun asked. Tejo shook his head. "I checked him during the diplomatic meeting. He wore no ornaments. No parasites." The room went very quiet. Jiwoo was the one who spoke what everyone was thinking. "So the person who gave out the infected ornaments somehow managed to avoid getting infected himself. That is very convenient." Princess Nara stood up, her royal bearing returning. "We need proof before we can accuse a general. Especially one as powerful as Vex. He commands 1/3 of our military forces." "Then we investigate carefully," said Do-hyun. "Quietly. We cannot let him know we suspect him." Over the next 2 days, they worked in secret. Tejo and Hana analyzed more parasites, looking for any weakness they could exploit. Jiwoo and Minho began developing a device that could detect the parasites' communication signals, hoping to trace where those signals were going. Meanwhile, Princess Nara used her authority to access old records and files about General Vex and the archaeological expedition he had supposedly led. What she found was troubling. The expedition had indeed happened, but it was not led by Vex. It was led by a scientist named Dr. Sumi, a respected xenobiologist who had worked for the Royal Academy. Vex had simply funded the expedition. More concerning was what happened after. Dr. Sumi had retired from public life shortly after returning, citing health problems. She had not been seen in the palace for 15 years. "We need to talk to her," Nara said as they reviewed the files in her secure study. If she was on that expedition, she might know the truth about these ornaments. Finding Dr. Sumi proved difficult. She lived in a remote area outside the capital city, in a small dwelling by the sea. When Princess Nara's personal shuttle landed nearby, Taiho felt nervous. They had brought minimal security, just 2 guards who were confirmed uninfected. Too many people knowing about this trip would raise suspicions. The dwelling was simple and peaceful, surrounded by gardens of alien plants that swayed in the breeze. Dr. Sumi answered the door herself. She was old now. Her pearl-like skin faded to a dull gray, her golden eyes dimmed. But when she saw Princess Nara, she did not seem surprised. "I wondered when someone would come," Sumi said quietly. "I have been waiting for years." They sat in her modest living area while Sumi prepared tea using methods that seemed ancient. Her hands shook slightly as she poured. "You know about the parasites," Nara said. It was not a question. Sumi nodded slowly. "I found them on the 3rd moon. They were in stasis, preserved in some kind of ancient facility. I did not know what they were at first. They looked like beautiful artifacts. General Vex was fascinated by them. He insisted we bring them back." "But you learned the truth," Taiho said. "Yes." Sumi's voice was heavy with old guilt. "I began to study them and realized they were not artifacts at all. They were biological weapons. When I tried to tell Vex, She paused, closing her eyes. "He told me to keep quiet. He said the ornaments would be valuable to the royal family. He promised me funding for more research if I stayed silent. I was young and ambitious. I agreed. You let them infect the royal family." Nara's voice was cold. "I did not know he would do that," Sumi said desperately. "I thought he wanted to study them safely. By the time I realized what he had done, the ornaments were already in the treasury, already being worn by your ancestors. I tried to speak up, but Vex made it clear what would happen to me if I did. So I retired, I hid. I have lived with my shame ever since." Hana leaned forward. "Why would Vex do this? What does he gain?" Sumi met their eyes. "Power. The parasites weaken their hosts slowly over time. Neural function decreases. Decision-making becomes impaired. Your grandfather, Princess, he was a strong leader until he began wearing that ornament. Then he became indecisive, paranoid. Your father is the same. And you, I suspect, have felt the effects as well." Nara's face showed realization. The headaches. The fatigue. "I thought it was just stress from my duties." "It was the parasite," Sumi confirmed. "Vex has been manipulating the royal family for 20 years, weakening them while he strengthens his own position. He does not wear ornaments himself. He does not need to. He controls those who do." Taiho felt anger building in his chest. This was calculated evil. Someone had deliberately poisoned an entire ruling class just to gain power. "We have to stop him. How?" Sumi asked. "He commands armies. He has loyal followers throughout the government. Many of them are infected and do not even know it. And if you try to remove the parasites by force, you risk killing the hosts." "Then we find another way," Nara said, steel in her voice. "We find a cure. We expose Vex. We save my people." On the flight back to the palace, Taiho watched the alien landscape pass below. Purple forests and silver rivers, a beautiful world hiding ugly secrets. He thought about Earth, about humanity's long history of fighting parasites and diseases. They had survived plague and pandemic. They had adapted and overcome. Maybe that experience was exactly what the Valerians needed now. "We can do this," he said to Nara. "Humans are good at fighting things that hide inside bodies. It is practically our specialty." She looked at him with something that might have been hope. "Then teach us, human. Teach us how to survive." The laboratory they set up was hidden deep in the palace, in a section used for storage that most people had forgotten existed. Taiho, Jiwoo, Minho, and Dr. Hana worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts on makeshift beds they had assembled from storage containers. Princess Nara visited whenever she could slip away from her duties without raising suspicion. General Vex was watching everyone closely now, his eyes sharp for any sign of unusual activity. The parasite samples they worked with came from volunteer subjects, removed carefully in small pieces to study without killing the host. It was delicate, dangerous work. The organisms fought back when threatened, sending pain signals through the neural pathways they had infiltrated. More than once they had to stop an extraction because the subject screamed in agony. Taiho stared at a parasite sample under a human microscope, modified to work with Valerian technology. Through his implants, he could see the creature's electromagnetic signature pulsing with hostile intelligence. It knew it was being studied. It did not like it. "These things are smart," he muttered. "Too smart." Jiwoo looked up from her workstation where she was analyzing genetic code. "That is what worries me. Normal parasites are simple. They feed, they reproduce, they spread. These parasites plan. They coordinate. They were designed by something with advanced intelligence. The question is who?" Minho said. He was working on a scanner that could detect the parasite's communication frequencies. "Vex is Valerian. He could not have created these. The technology is beyond anything your species has. No offense, Dr. Hana." Hana shook her head. "None taken. You are right. These parasites came from somewhere else. Vex found them, but he did not make them." Princess Nara entered the lab, moving quietly and glancing behind her to make sure she had not been followed. She looked exhausted. The parasite was draining her, and the stress of maintaining appearances while investigating a conspiracy was taking its toll. "Any progress?" she asked. "Some," Jiwoo replied. "We have identified the parasite's primary vulnerability. It feeds on neural energy, but it also needs a specific mineral compound to maintain its structure, something called velerinium, which is native to your planet. So if we remove the velerinium from their environment," Nara said slowly, "they would weaken." "In theory," Jiwoo confirmed. "But velerinium is in your water, your soil, even in the air in trace amounts. We cannot remove it from your bodies without removing it from your entire planet." Taiho leaned back in his chair, frustrated. They had been working for days with little progress. Every solution they found had impossible obstacles. Remove the parasites surgically. The neural damage would be catastrophic. Poison them? The toxins needed would also harm the host. Starve them? Impossible without starving the Valerians, too. "Tell me about Earth," Princess Nara said suddenly. "Tell me how humans deal with parasites." Taiho looked at her, surprised by the question. "We have many methods. Medicine that kills them. Surgery to remove them. Vaccines to prevent infection. But our best defense has always been our immune system." "Immune system." Nara repeated the unfamiliar term. "Your body's natural defense," Jiwoo explained. "On Earth, living things have evolved ways to fight off invaders. Our bodies identify foreign organisms and attack them. Do Valerians not have something similar?" Dr. Hana looked thoughtful. "We have defense mechanisms, but they are different from what you describe. Our bodies maintain balance, but they do not attack foreign organisms aggressively. We evolved on a world with fewer diseases. We did not need such defenses. That is why the parasites work so well here," Minho said, understanding dawning. "They come from somewhere else, somewhere harsh where organisms had to be more aggressive to survive. The Valerian body does not recognize them as threats. But a human body might," Taiho said, an idea forming. "What if we could train the Valerian immune system to recognize the parasites? Teach it to fight back?" They spent the next several hours working on this new approach. It was risky. The Valerian biology was very different from human biology. What worked for Earth organisms might not work here. But it was the first real hope they had found. The solution they developed was based on a human technique called immunotherapy. They would take cells from an infected Valerian, expose them to weakened parasite samples, and teach those cells to recognize and attack the parasites. Then they would inject those educated cells back into the host. If it worked, the Valerian body would start fighting the infection on its own. "We need to test it," Jiwoo said. "But who volunteers for something this experimental?" "I do," Princess Nara said immediately. "Your Highness, no," Hana protested. "You are too important. If something goes wrong, I die," Nara interrupted. "If we do nothing, my entire species dies slowly while Vex consolidates power. I would rather take the risk." They prepared for the procedure in tense silence. Minho had modified human medical equipment to work with Valerian physiology. Jiwoo had created the treatment batch, cells that had been trained to recognize parasites as enemies. Hana would perform the injection, her hands steady despite her fear. Taiho stood beside the medical bed where Princess Nara lay. She looked calm, but he could see her hands gripping the edges of the bed tightly. "Why are humans so resilient?" she asked him suddenly. "Your bodies fight so hard to survive. Where does that strength come from?" Taiho thought about his home world, about Earth's harsh environments and deadly diseases, about ice ages and plagues and predators, about millions of years of survival against impossible odds. "We come from a dangerous place," he said. Earth tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. Starvation, disease, cold, heat, predators, parasites. For most of our history, just living to adulthood was an achievement. So we evolved to be stubborn. Our bodies learned to fight everything because if they did not fight, we would not exist. A world that breeds warriors, Nara said softly. A world that breeds survivors, Taiho corrected. We are not strong because we like fighting. We are strong because we refuse to give up, she smiled. Then let us hope some of that stubbornness works in my blood. Hana administered the injection. The treatment cells entered Nara's bloodstream, carried by the circulatory system toward the site of infection. Taiho watched with his implants, seeing the new cells moving through her body like tiny soldiers marching to war. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Nara gasped, her back arching. Taiho could see it through his enhanced vision. The educated cells had reached the parasite and were attacking it. The parasite was fighting back, sending pain signals through the neural pathways. Your Highness, do you want us to stop? Hana asked urgently. No! Nara gritted out through clenched teeth. Keep going. The battle inside her body raged for nearly an hour. Taiho watched in fascination and horror as human-inspired immune responses fought alien bioweapons. The parasite was strong, but the educated cells were relentless. They surrounded it, cutting off its access to neural energy. They attacked its structure, breaking down the proteins it needed to survive. Slowly, gradually, the parasite began to weaken. Its electromagnetic signature dimmed. Its tendrils retracted slightly from the neural pathways they had invaded. It was dying. When it finally stopped moving, everyone in the lab held their breath. Hana ran a medical scan, her device humming softly. The holographic display showed the parasite still attached to Nara's back, but now it was dormant, dead. And the Valerian body was already beginning to repair the damage it had caused. Princess Nara sat up carefully. She touched her back where the ornament had been. I can feel the difference. The weight is gone. Not the physical weight, but the mental one. Like I have been carrying a heavy load for years and finally put it down. It worked, Jiwoo said, disbelief and joy in her voice. It actually worked. They had their cure. Now they needed to produce enough of it to treat 23 infected Valerians. And they needed to do it before General Vex realized what they were doing and moved to stop them. The race against time had begun. The production of the cure was going well, maybe too well. Taiho felt uneasy as he watched batch after batch of treatment cells multiply in the cultivation chambers Minho had built. They had enough now to treat all 23 infected individuals. Everything was ready. They just needed to gather the infected officials without arousing suspicion and administer the treatment. Princess Nara had called a private council meeting, inviting only those she knew were infected. She had told them it was a discussion about new security protocols. It was a thin excuse, but it was the best they could manage without revealing their true purpose. The meeting was scheduled for that evening in a conference room far from General Vex's usual locations. Taiho was helping Jiwoo pack the treatment doses into secure containers when Dr. Hana burst into the lab, her face pale with panic. They know, she gasped. Vex knows. He is moving troops toward the conference room. How? Do-hyun demanded. We were careful. We told no one. Hana's eyes filled with tears. It was Sumi. Dr. Sumi. She contacted Vex after we visited her. She told him everything. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Taiho felt his stomach drop. They had trusted Sumi, believed her guilt was genuine, but she had sold them out. We need to move now, Princess Nara said, entering the lab with her 2 guards. Gather the treatments. We go to the council members directly. Warn them. They split into teams. Nara and her guards would take half the doses. Do-hyun, Taiho, and Jiwoo would take the other half. Minho and Hana would stay to protect the lab and destroy any evidence if necessary. It was rushed and imperfect, but they had no choice. Taiho, Do-hyun, and Jiwoo moved quickly through the palace corridors, trying to look casual while carrying containers of potentially world-changing medicine. They reached the quarters of their first target, a minister named Counselor Vin. The silver-skinned official answered his door looking suspicious. What is this about? He asked. No time to explain, Taiho said. You are infected with a parasite. We have a cure. We need to administer it now before General Vex stops us. Vin stared at them for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. I trust Princess Nara. If she sent you, then come in. The injection took only seconds. Finn winced as the educated cells entered his bloodstream, but he bore the pain stoically. Within minutes, Taiho could see through his implants that the treatment was working. The parasite was dying. They moved to the next target, then the next. Some officials were easy to convince. Others needed more explanation. Each treatment took precious minutes they did not have. Taiho kept expecting to see Vex's soldiers around every corner. On their fifth stop, they ran into trouble. The official was a young commander named Taijin, who wore an infected ornament on his chest. But when they explained the situation, he refused the treatment. General Vex has been good to me, Taijin said stubbornly. He promoted me when others said I was too young. I will not betray him based on wild accusations. This is not about betrayal, Jiwoo said urgently. Look, we can prove the parasite is real. Let us scan you. But before they could demonstrate, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Taiho heard shouts and the heavy sound of military boots running. Lockdown protocol, Taijin said, suddenly alert. Someone has triggered a security emergency. Do-hyun's communication device buzzed. It was Minho's voice, crackling with static and fear. They found the lab. We are under attack. The transmission cut off. Taiho's blood ran cold. They had to get back to the lab. They had to help their friends. But they still had doses to deliver, people to cure. Go, Jiwoo said, reading his expression. I will finish the deliveries. You two get back to Minho and Hana. We should not split up, Do-hyun protested. We do not have a choice. Go, Taeho and Do-hyun ran. The palace was chaos now. Guards running in all directions, officials demanding to know what was happening. They used the confusion to move faster, taking side corridors and service passages that Nara had shown them. When they reached the lab, they found the door blasted open. Smoke filled the air. Inside, Minho was on the floor, unconscious but breathing. The cultivation equipment was destroyed, smashed by weapons fire, and Dr. Hana stood in the center of the room, held at gunpoint by 3 soldiers, wearing General Vex's insignia. Do not move, said the soldier, holding Hana. You are under arrest for conspiracy against the Valerian state, but Taiho barely heard him. He was staring at Dr. Hana, his implants showing him something terrible. Her electromagnetic signature was wrong, distorted, and on the back of her neck, hidden beneath her hair, was something pulsing with sick yellow light, a parasite. But this one was different from the others. It was larger, more aggressive, more integrated with the host nervous system. Hana, Taiho said quietly. You are infected, she laughed, and the sound was wrong. Too harsh, too cold. Of course I am infected, clever human. Did you think I was helping you out of kindness? The parasite is controlling you, Do-hyun said, understanding dawning. Not controlling, Hana said, her voice changing slightly, becoming something not quite her own. Guiding, influencing, Hana still makes her own choices. She simply makes the choices we want her to make. We? Taeho asked. The thing speaking through Hana's mouth smiled. We are Krell. This world belongs to us. It has always belonged to us. We planted the parasites centuries ago, waiting for them to be found, waiting for fools like Vex to distribute them. Every generation we weaken this civilization. Every generation they become easier to conquer. The Krell, Taeho had heard of them. A hostile empire on the far edge of known space, aggressive, expansionist, ruthless. If they had been orchestrating this for centuries, then the Valerian civilization had been dying slowly for longer than anyone realized. Why tell us this? Do-hyun demanded. Because it does not matter, the Krell-controlled Hana said. You have already lost. Vex is arresting the princess now. The infected officials will be told you tried to poison them. Your cure will be labeled as a weapon, and in 6 months, when the royal family is weak enough, the Krell fleet will arrive. This world will fall without a single shot fired. Taeho felt rage building in his chest. All of this, the suffering, the conspiracy, the infection of innocent people, it was all preparation for an invasion. The parasites were not just bioweapons. They were the first wave of a war that had been going on for generations without the Valerians even knowing they were fighting. Hana is still in there, Taiho said. I can see her. The real her. Fighting you. For just a moment, Hana's expression changed. Pain and shame crossed her face. Taiho, she said in her real voice. I am sorry. I tried to resist. I tried to warn you. But it is so strong. It knows everything I know. It sees everything I see. Then it knows about the cure, Do-hyun said grimly. Yes, The Krell voice returned. And we have already adapted. Your human immunotherapy will not work on our newer generation of parasites. The ones we just released into the palace ventilation system. Everyone here will be infected by morning. Everyone will be ours. The soldiers moved forward to arrest them. But before they could, the room's lights flickered and died. Emergency power came on, bathing everything in dim red light. Then Minho sat up, no longer unconscious. He had been faking, waiting for the right moment. His hands moved to a device on his belt, something he had been building in secret. He activated it. An electromagnetic pulse filled the room. Not strong enough to harm living beings, but precisely calibrated to disrupt the parasite's neural connections. For just a few seconds, they were stunned, unable to communicate or control their hosts. In those seconds, Hana's eyes cleared. She looked at Taiho with desperate clarity. The palace ventilation. Sector 7. Shut it down. Stop the spread. And Taiho, thank you for trying to save us. Save my people, even if you cannot save me. Then the pulse ended and the Krell voice returned. But Taiho and Do-hyun were already running, Minho stumbling after them. Behind them, they heard Hana screaming, fighting against the thing in her mind, buying them precious seconds to escape. They had to reach Sector 7. They had to stop the new parasites from spreading. And somehow they had to save Princess Nara from whatever trap Vex had set. The conspiracy was bigger than they had imagined, and the enemy was more dangerous than any of them had known. But they were human, and humans did not surrender, not even when the odds were impossible. The palace ventilation system was a massive network of tunnels and ducts that ran through every wall and floor. Sector 7 controlled the main distribution hub, a central chamber where air was processed before being sent throughout the building. If the Krell had released new parasites into that system, everyone in the palace would be infected within hours. Taeho, Do-hyun, and Minho ran through the emergency corridors, following the maintenance maps Minho had downloaded before they fled the lab. Alarms still blared. Red lights flashed. They could hear soldiers searching for them, boots pounding on metal floors. How do we shut down an entire ventilation system? Taeho asked between breaths. We do not, Minho replied. We reverse it. Make it pull air out instead of pushing it in. Vent everything to the outside atmosphere. Will that work? It should filter out the parasites before they can spread. But it will make the palace uncomfortable for a while. No air circulation. They reached Sector 7's access door. It was locked with a security code. Minho pulled out a small device and began working on the panel. His hands were shaking either from fear or from the injury he had taken in the lab. Blood stained his sleeve. You are hurt, Do-hyun observed. I am functional, Minho said tersely. That is what matters. The door opened. Beyond it was a vast chamber filled with enormous fans and filtration systems. The noise was deafening, a constant roar of moving air. And standing in the center of the chamber, waiting for them, was General Vex. He was alone, which should have been comforting but somehow was not. The general stood with perfect military bearing, his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was calm, almost amused. I knew someone would figure it out eventually, Vex said. His voice carried clearly despite the noise, amplified by speakers built into his uniform. I did not expect it to be humans. Your kind has only just reached the stars. You should not be this clever. Where is Princess Nara? Taeho demanded. Safe for now. She is in the throne room, surrounded by my most loyal soldiers, all infected with the newest generation of parasites, all completely under Krell control. Vex smiled. You cannot save her. You cannot stop this. Why did you even try? Because it is right, Do-hyun said simply. Vex laughed. Right, I am saving my people. The Valerian Empire has grown soft, weak. We have forgotten how to fight, how to survive. When the Krell arrive, they will sweep through this sector of space like a storm. Every civilization will fall except those strong enough to stand with them. I chose strength. You chose betrayal, Taeho said. You sold out your own species. I saved them, Vex corrected. The Krell promised me that any Valerian who serves them will be spared. I will be governor of this world when they arrive. My family will prosper. My people will live, even if they live as subjects rather than rulers. Minho had been moving slowly toward the main control panel while Vex talked. Now he was close enough. His fingers flew over the holographic interface, inputting commands. Vex noticed. His expression hardened. Stop him. Soldiers poured into the chamber from doors Taeho had not seen. At least 20 of them, all wearing Vex's insignia. Tejo looked at them through his implants and felt his heart sink. Every single one had the telltale glow of a parasite. Not the old generation that could be cured. The new generation that Hana said was adapted against their treatment. "You cannot fight them," Vex said. "They are mine, body and mind." But Minho hit the final command. The massive fans began to slow, then reverse. The chamber's air pressure changed suddenly, making everyone's ears pop. Fresh air was no longer being pushed into the palace. Instead, all interior air was being pulled out, filtered, and expelled into the atmosphere outside. Vex's face twisted with rage. "It does not matter. The parasites are already in the system. Some will have already reached hosts. Maybe," Doyun said, "but fewer than if we had done nothing. And now your backup plan is gone." The soldiers moved forward, weapons raised. Taiho had no weapons. No way to fight trained military personnel. But he had his implants, his ability to see what others could not. And he had an idea. "The parasites use electromagnetic signals to communicate," he said quickly to Minho. "Your EMP device. Can you make it stronger? Hit all of them at once?" Minho looked at the device on his belt. "Maybe, but it will burn out. One use only, and I'm not sure the range is wide enough for this chamber." "Try anyway." Minho began modifying the device, working frantically while Do-hyun positioned himself between the soldiers and his friends. The older man had no weapons either, but he stood firm, ready to fight with his bare hands if necessary. The soldiers raised their weapons. Tejo could see them preparing to fire. Then a voice echoed through the chamber coming from the speaker system. "Stand down. All units stand down. That is a direct order from your princess, Nara. She was alive." The soldiers hesitated, confused. Their programming told them to obey Vex, but their training told them to obey the royal family. For a moment, they were paralyzed by conflicting commands. Then Jiwoo burst into the chamber from a side entrance, breathing hard. "The treatments worked. We cured 15 officials. They are spreading the word now. Half the palace knows what Vex did." "It changes nothing," Vex snarled. He pulled out a weapon, a sleek Valerian plasma pistol. He aimed it at Taiho. "I kill the human who discovered everything. I kill his friends. I tell everyone you were spies trying to poison the princess." "The Krell still win." "No," said a new voice. "They do not." Princess Nara entered the chamber, flanked by her personal guards and a dozen cured officials. She looked exhausted but determined. Behind her came more people. Palace staff, junior officers, citizens who had heard what was happening and come to help. "It is over, Vex," Nara said. "Surrender." Vex looked around at the growing crowd. His face went through several expressions: rage, denial, finally resignation. He lowered his weapon. "You think you have won," he said quietly, "but the Krell are still coming. In 6 months their fleet arrives. What will you do then, princess? How will your soft civilization fight warriors who have conquered 100 worlds?" "We will not fight alone," Nara replied. She looked at Taiho, at Do-hyun, at all the humans who had risked everything to help her people. "We will have allies. We will have friends who know how to survive." Minho finished modifying his EMP device. "I got it working," he said. "Wide area pulse should hit every parasite in the palace. But your highness, it might hurt. The parasites will die violently." "Do it," Nara commanded. Minho activated the device. The electromagnetic pulse expanded outward, invisible but powerful. Throughout the chamber, throughout the entire palace, every parasite suddenly lost its connection to the Krell network. They thrashed and died, sending pain signals through their hosts' nervous systems. Soldiers screamed and fell to their knees. The ones under Krell control suddenly found their minds their own again. Some were confused. Some were horrified at what they had done while infected. And some, like Vex, simply collapsed free of the parasites that had been guiding their thoughts for decades. Vex lay on the floor, breathing heavily. Without the parasite's influence, he looked old and tired. "I thought I was saving them," he whispered. "I truly believed it was the only way." Nara knelt beside him. "I know that is how the Krell work. They make you think betrayal is survival. But you were wrong. We survive by standing together, not by selling each other out." Security forces that were still uninfected arrived to take Vex into custody. Medical teams began treating the soldiers who had been under Krell control. It was chaos, but organized chaos. People were helping each other. The immediate crisis was over. Taiho sank down against a wall, suddenly exhausted. They had done it. They had stopped the parasites from spreading. They had exposed Vex's conspiracy. They had saved Princess Nara and her people, but as he sat there catching his breath, he thought about Vex's warning. The Krell were still coming. In 6 months, a hostile empire would arrive expecting to find a weakened, infiltrated civilization ready to fall. Instead, they would find a united people who knew they were at war. The battle for the palace was over. But the real war was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the parasites were purged from the Valerian palace. The recovery had been slow and difficult. Many of the infected officials needed extensive medical treatment to repair the neural damage the parasites had caused. Some would never fully recover. But they were alive and they were free. Taiho stood in what had once been a storage room but was now his office. The Valerian government had given him an official position as special advisor on biological threats. It was a title that meant he spent most of his time looking at microscope slides and training Valerian scientists to recognize dangerous organisms. It was not glamorous work, but it was important. Through his window, he could see the palace gardens where Valerian workers were planting new flowers. Life was slowly returning to normal, but everyone knew it was temporary. The Krell were coming. Every day brought them closer. A knock on his door made him turn. Princess Nara entered, though she was not really a princess anymore. After her father's retirement, she had taken the throne 2 weeks ago. Queen Nara now, ruler of the Valerian Empire. She looked the part, wearing formal robes of deep purple and a new crown that did not hide any parasites. "You are avoiding the celebration," she said. "I do not like crowds," Taiho replied honestly. The celebration was for the formal alliance treaty between Earth and Velar Prime. After months of negotiation, both governments had agreed to mutual defense and cooperation. It was historic. Ships full of human engineers and soldiers were already on their way to help prepare Valerian defenses. "Neither do I," Nara admitted. She sat down in one of the chairs Taiho had designed for his office, something that could accommodate both human and Valerian body shapes. Too many people watching. Too many expectations. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Over the past months, they had become friends. Not just allies or colleagues, but actual friends. Taiho had taught Nara about Earth's history, about humanity's struggles and triumphs. She had taught him about Valerian culture, their art, their philosophy, their dreams. "Have you heard from Dr. Hana?" Taiho asked quietly. Nara's expression saddened. "She is improving. The advanced parasite did more damage than the others. She has gaps in her memory, times when the Krell were fully controlling her. But she is fighting to recover. And Dr. Sumi, still imprisoned. She will stand trial eventually, but her testimony about the Krell has been valuable. We are learning their tactics, their strategies." Taiho thought about all the people who had been hurt by this conspiracy. Innocent Valerians turned into puppets. Loyal servants forced to betray their oaths. Even Vex, in his own twisted way, had thought he was protecting his people. The Krell were good at finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them. "Do you think we can win?" he asked. "When they arrive?" Nara was quiet for a long moment. "Alone? No, the Krell Empire is vast. They have technology we cannot match. But together with humanity..." She paused. "You showed me something important, Taiho. You showed me that strength is not just about advanced weapons or powerful shields. It is about refusing to give up. About adapting and surviving no matter what. Humans are good at that," Taiho said. "We have had a lot of practice. Which is exactly what we need." Nara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens. "I have been reading about Earth's history. Your wars, your diseases, your natural disasters. By all logic, your species should have gone extinct 1,000 times over. But you did not. You kept fighting. Sometimes stubbornness is a virtue," Taiho said with a slight smile. "Sometimes it is the only virtue that matters." Nara turned back to him. "I want you to do something for me. Something important." "What?" "Train my people. Not just the scientists, but everyone. Teach them how to think like humans. How to see threats that hide in plain sight. How to fight when fighting seems impossible. The Krell have been predators for centuries. We need to become predators too." Taiho considered this. It was a tall order. Changing an entire culture's way of thinking was not something one person could do. But he had help now. Earth was sending teachers and advisors, human military strategists who knew how to fight against superior forces, engineers who could build weapons from limited resources, doctors who specialized in treating bioweapons. "I can try," he said. "But you need to remember something. Humans are good at surviving, but we are not invincible. We lose battles. We make mistakes. We just do not let those losses stop us from trying again. Then that is what I need you to teach my people, Nara said. How to lose and keep fighting anyway. Over the following weeks, Taiho found himself busier than ever. He lectured at the Valerian Military Academy about human tactics and strategies. He trained medical personnel to recognize biological weapons. He worked with engineers to design defense systems that could detect infiltrators, and perhaps most importantly, he shared stories. Stories of human survival against impossible odds. He told them about the Black Death that killed a third of Europe, but from which humanity recovered. About the world wars that devastated continents, but led to unprecedented cooperation afterward. About the near-extinction events that early humans survived through ingenuity and determination. The Valerians listened with fascination and growing hope. Minho was working on weapon systems, adapting human designs to Valerian technology. Jiwoo had become an expert on Krell biology, studying every scrap of information they could extract from the parasites. Do-hyun was coordinating with Earth's diplomatic corps, ensuring the alliance remained strong. Everyone had a role to play. One evening, Taiho was reviewing defense plans when his communication device buzzed. It was Nara, asking him to meet her on the palace roof. He made his way up through the winding staircases until he emerged into the cool night air. The sky above Valor Prime was spectacular. 3 moons hung overhead, and the stars were so numerous they looked like glowing dust. Nara stood at the edge of the roof looking up. "Sometimes I forget how beautiful it is," she said when Taiho joined her. "When you are worried about invasions and conspiracies, you forget to just look at the stars." "They are impressive," Taiho agreed. "Different from Earth's sky, but beautiful." "In 6 months, some of those stars will be Krell warships," Nara said softly.
They will come expecting to find a broken civilization.
What will they find instead? Taiho thought about everything they had accomplished. The alliance with humanity, the training programs, the new defense systems, the cultural exchange that was changing both their species. They had done so much, but would it be enough? "They will find something they did not expect," he said finally. "They will find a civilization that knows it is under attack. They will find people who have learned how to fight. And they will find that we are not alone anymore." Nara smiled. "You know what I find most remarkable about humans? You are not particularly strong or fast. Your technology is still primitive compared to most spacefaring species. But you have this quality, this absolute refusal to accept defeat. It is infuriating and inspiring in equal measure. We call it hope," Taiho said. "When logic says you should give up, hope says to try one more time." "Then I hope your hope is contagious," Nara replied. "Because my people will need a lot of it." They stood together on the roof, human and alien, looking up at the stars that held both wonder and danger. Somewhere out there, the Krell fleet was traveling toward them, an empire that had conquered worlds, that had turned biological weapons into an art form, that believed the Valerians would fall without resistance. They were wrong. The Valerians would not fall. They had allies now. They had teachers. They had learned that survival was not about being the strongest or most advanced. It was about being stubborn enough to keep fighting even when everything seemed lost. In the distance, Taiho could see the lights of the spaceport where Earthships were arriving daily. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, regular people who had volunteered to help a species they had only recently met. That was humanity's real strength, not weapons or tactics, but the willingness to stand with others against darkness. "You never answered my question from that first day," Nara said suddenly, in the diplomatic hall. "I asked why you were looking at my back." Taiho felt his face warm at the memory. "I was looking at the parasite. I know that now. But do you know what I thought at the time? That I was being rude? I thought you were being rude, yes. But I also thought maybe you were just curious. Humans always seem so curious about everything." She turned to look at him directly. "That curiosity saved my life. Saved my entire civilization. A Valerian would have looked away, not wanting to stare. But you kept looking until you understood what was wrong." "I almost started a war," Taiho pointed out. "You almost started a lot of things," Nara agreed. "But what you actually started was a friendship. Between our species, between us personally, and that friendship might be what saves us all when the Krell arrive." 3 months later, when the Krell fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting to find a weakened prey, they instead found a unified force ready to fight. Human and Valerian ships stood side by side. Defense stations bristled with weapons designed by both species working together. And on the flagship of the defense fleet, a young human xenobiologist stood beside a Valerian queen, both of them ready to show the Krell that some civilizations could not be conquered.